All right, welcome to the Hispanic Patriot interview of the week. We have our good friend, Mr. Adam DeRito from the Tuxes and Tomahawk podcast, and a patriot currently serving in the U.S. Army. And he's got a lot of good information for us. We're going to touch on some topics that are hot right now in the state, and then we're going to get into some national news. So, without further ado, introduce yourself to the audience, Adam. Go ahead.
Well, hey everybody. My name is Adam DeRito. I work in oil and gas here in Colorado. That's my main job. I'm a reservist in the United States Army, serving in civil affairs. Nothing I say represents the DoD, just as a disclosure, or the United States Army. Unlike some vice chair guy who uses the Army values as part of his campaign speech, which you cannot do. That's actually illegal. But no, I've been involved in federal politics for over 15 years. I'm a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. My claim to fame is taking down corruption within the officer ranks and retaliation for reporting misconduct, sexual assault, mental health violations, things like that. And I decided to get involved sometimes I regret it, getting involved in local politics about 2 years ago, just starting to show up to meetings and starting to participate in my so-called democracy. And then I realized that local politics were actually worse than the federal side. I didn't think that was possible. But then, you take a responsibility of, do you want to be a resident or do you want to be a citizen? Do you want to be the guy that complains on Facebook and just goes to work every day and takes your kids to soccer practice and not do anything about it? Or are you going to be the person that actually shows up to the meetings and actually try to have an influence on your local community, state, and nation? And I felt that it was my obligation, since I swore an oath to the Constitution, to defend that. And that's why I found out that I have fought more domestic enemies than I have fought foreign. And here we are. I met you guys over the past, 18 months, and it's been a pleasure integrating and working with the Colorado Hispanic Republicans over this time. And it's a really important community to me because I work in oil and gas, and probably over 60 to 70% of the men and women I've worked with are from the Hispanic community. And it's what our livelihoods are based on. And I want to make a difference and ensure that their children have a future and ensure that we have good jobs here. And we have a way forward for the conservative movement, with the America First values.
Yeah,
Very nice,
so
Adam. That's why we appreciate you having been on the show.
we're kind of winging it tonight, so we're just going to talk about some topics. But I would like to hear a little bit more about the DeRito Act. Give us a little insight as to what brought you to do that and what exactly it means.
Yeah, sure. So the DeRito Act, or we're reading what it's unofficially the DeRito Act. Officially, it's like the Military Mental Health Justice Procurement Act, or whatever it is in Congress. That's what we're trying to push for. And the biggest thing about this is I was retaliated against at the Air Force Academy. A 3-star general had my mental health records falsified when I reported sexual assault. And as a result, they said I was crazy and that all my testimony against all the people who raped and assaulted these women could not be used in court, and they all got away with it. So we had literal convicted pedophiles and rapists serving in our armed forces. And as a result, it did cost me a lot of problems, for over a decade, trying to fight to get my reputation back and all the things they said about me. But here I am. I'm still standing here. And ironically, in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, there's nothing that specifically states a commander cannot go into your records and change your mental health records at will.
Wow.
And yeah, and in the civilian side, this would be a HIPAA violation, right?
Yes,
Like
it
you
would
can't,
be.
if your doctor messed with your records or something like that, you could sue your doctor. Well, you can't do that in the United States military. So our objective is to pass, unofficially the DeRito Act, or the Military, Mental Health, Justice Act. And what that's going to state is that it is illegal for any commander, NCO, or civilian DoD employee to modify or change mental health records in retaliation for reporting rape, sexual assault, or harassment. And if they do, then you can use the HIPAA laws that are already on the books in order to sue them in federal court and hold them accountable and actually change our military for the better and encourage service members to do the right thing and seek out services if they actually need them.
Well,
Brilliant.
regarding commanders, I have a little bit of a history with that because when I was stationed at Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico, I had received orders to go to Hickam in Hawaii. And there was a little incident that happened. I won't get into too much detail, but my commander didn't like it. And lo and behold, like a week before I was ready to ship out, he canceled my orders to Hawaii, kept me Kept me at Holloman.
Hickman's a lot nicer than Holloman.
Duh. Yeah. So
well, it's quite amazing what our
so
soldiers.
I know
go
what
through.
you. I said that just
Kudos to you
to
guys.
tell you that the commanders can do exactly what they please if they have
Yeah.
the notion.
Yeah, and
So-
the biggest argument I have against this is that our government was set up with a legislative, a judicial, and an executive branch, right? But unfortunately, especially in the last 20 years of war, the military has now become the fourth branch of government that does not have to listen to anything. I mean, I am the only person in the history of the U.S. military to take a federal service academy to the 10th District Court of Appeals. And ironically, at Gabe Evans' swearing in, Chief Justice Bremer, now Judge Bremer, who's the guy who decided my case, and he was standing right there, very tiny man, standing next to him, ironically.
no relation to Eli, I hope.
No. But he's the one who made the decision. Like my case I didn't lose my case, but my case was decided that is a 12-6 Bravo. And in the federal court system, that means that the military is a separate society and should be treated as such. And therefore, the court system will not tell the military what to do. And then I went all the way to the president of the United States, Secretary of Defense. At that time, it was Biden and Lloyd Austin. And they said, well, you've exhausted all administrative remedies. And then I went to the Air Force Board of Correction and Military Records, and I won my board. They stated that my record should be changed. It was an error or an injustice. And even after all that, all the green lights, the Secretary of the Air Force has to sign off on it. At the time, it was Mr. Kendall, and they just refused to sign the order. So even though I won my case and I was vindicated, they refused to act and do the right thing and correct my records. And this is something I'm still fighting today, which is why I wanted to get involved in local politics, because I wanted to make sure that our new freshman congressman, because I've worked with Doug Lamborn in the past, I worked with Ken Buck in the past, I've worked with Senator Cory Gardner, and they were absolutely useless. They did absolutely nothing for my case, right? So, as part of my contingent and working in local politics, I even went to Jeff Crank and Gabe Evans and Jeff Hurd after they won. Lauren Boebert wants nothing to do with the military, despite how she says she supports veterans. It's not true. I've been to her office numerous times over the years, and she did nothing. And I said, we'll see what you do over the next 2 years, but I would really appreciate you to support and sponsor and champion the bill of the DeRito Act. And we'll see what they do over the next, year or so with the NDAA. I'm hopeful that the representatives that represent me will stand up for our military veterans here in the state of Colorado. But like I said, the clock is ticking and primaries are coming up for 2026. So.
Yep. And I was talking to, I was talking to Nick, where I was thinking that Miss Bower may be ripe for a primary this coming term. So
she's not very well.
She's not very well favored.
She's not very well favored in District 4. And like I said, I've had a relationship with Lauren. I know Lauren personally. I've talked to her numerous times.
We have as well. She was one of our first interviewees.
Yeah, and unfortunately, what I've seen is that, even the other day, she posted on her Facebook, I'm here to support the oil and gas workers, the farmers and the ranchers, and protect our water rights. And I said, I'm literally all three of those things, and you don't talk to me anymore. And I'm probably one of the biggest advocates in those communities because I'm the only one involved politically, because most guys are union guys or, they're working on the rigs. They don't have time for this stuff, but I make time because I believe it's important. And not once has any of those staffers reached out to me to work on these issues closely with those representatives. I will give Gabe Evans some kudos here, though. He did try to interact with the refinery and get involved with the union, but then he got basically attacked by the Canadians who own that refinery. And actually, something I had to deal with at work recently was because there's a Democrat operative by the name of Lisa Burnett who is in charge of government affairs at the refinery, and she has donated over $25,000 of company money to John Hickenlooper. She works for the chief of staff for John Hickenlooper in the background in the past. She has pictures of herself with the DNC in 2008 with some of the richest billionaires in the Democratic Party. And I went to HR in the legal department. I said, it's really cool getting $10 million fines from the Democrats in Denver every year, and you guys just pay it off just so you can continue to exist. But this is costing the company a lot of money. It's costing jobs. It's costing, a bad influence on our communities when we provide so much for this state in terms of oil and gas, asphalt paving, jet fuel, and everything. And I said, this is something you might want to look into. And they said, where'd you get this information? I'm like, I work with the RNC. I know these things. Also, I'm an intelligence officer, so good luck. You know what I mean? So, but the problem is that, we all talk about what's on the surface of what's wrong with the party. And, we're obviously going to get into the discussion about what happened with the party race and everything else. But there's so many bigger issues that are affecting hundreds of thousands of conservatives here in the state that aren't involved in politics directly. And it is jobs at the refinery. It's our electricians, our boiler makers, our pipe fitters, our welders, our truck drivers, and everything else. And who's fighting for them? I'm the only one at these meetings. I'm the only one down at the state capitol advocating for these things. And Ken DeGraff's done a great job. Scott Bottoms has done a good job. Luck's done a great job. Brittany Bradley's doing a good job. But that's it. I can't name anyone else who's actually fighting for conservative America First Agenda 47 values besides those people that I named. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a real shame, because when people gain power, that seems to be they forget their responsibilities. Please, Hugo,
Correct.
go right ahead.
Well, that's, I hate to say it, but that's kind of par for the course for some of these people. And, the Colorado delegation, leaves a lot to be desired. In fact, it looks like Mr. Hurd is going to turn out to be just who we thought he was. I heard another little tidbit today about that. So, well, that's a different topic, but it's just the kind of thing that kind of, rubs me the wrong way. You have these people who say they're one thing and then they turn out to be something else. And, our delegation right now is not the best. It could be the best. We've got some people that should be stepping up, but they're not stepping up. And I agree with you, Adam. It's a disgrace. And we're just going to have to deal with it. And this is a good segue into what we've got coming up with the state party. We just went through a what I would call a shocker election. I'm not entirely shocked. I expected them to fight. My my narrative on what took place is that side did a better job of getting their propaganda out, and they managed to swing just enough votes to take the election. Because if you think about it, 15 votes in the other direction, and Lori's the chair. So,
well, it's easy how they did that, and I actually watched them play it out in real time. And this is actually really unfortunate because, like I said, they purposely kept me out of anything in Weld County. And I don't understand. I'm a moral and ethical person. I call things as they are, and they don't like it. Well, I'm sorry, but like I said, I don't support people in power that sent my generation to war for 20 years. I just do not. I think it's time for the America First JD Vance generation to get ready to replace Donald Trump in 2028.
I agree with that.
And we need to plant those seeds now. This is not something I want to wait to. Like, hey, you guys had 20, 30 years to do your job. You did okay in some aspects, but you mostly failed. And your end policies and the wars that you sent us to were a result of that. A lot of my friends died because of the same people that were elected into office, into the Republican Party, right? And what I saw was master strategy at the last minute, and the grassroots, unfortunately, were not prepared for it. Because when I showed up and I'm driving up to try to find a parking spot, I see Jason Everett signs everywhere, who was never really officially announced. Richard Holtorf, who I'm friendly with in person, but he intentionally pronounces my last name wrong, even though I always respectfully call him Colonel, even because that was his rank in the Army, right? And what they did was it was really smart, because Lori Sain was definitely favored to win. And I will tell you, I work with a lot of people in DC. I work in a lot of the oil and gas sector, and I had secured millions of dollars in donations ready to go in the GOP if Lori Sain had won, because she is the only candidate in the interviews that I gave that openly said I was going to support oil and gas workers, infrastructure, farmers, and ranchers. And I have connections with a lot of those people. I offered an open interview to anyone running for chair, and the only people that reached out to me were Jeremy Goodall, Lori Sain, and Darcy Shanning. Right. So I gave them an interview. I offered it to Britta. Hey, you guys want to come on?
We did the same thing. We did the same thing here.
Because I want to use my podcast platform to ensure that this information and long form interviews get out to everyone in the state of Colorado, because they are so terrible at social media and they're so bad at spreading information. So I want to be free of charge. I'm not charging anything to use my platform and my influence and my connections in DC to do these things. And I will tell you, we lost, I'm not going to give the exact number, but it was a lot of money. A lot of money disappeared instantaneously when they did that. And what they did is that they put up Everett, they put up Holtorf, and I call him the Dan Crenshaw of Colorado, the guy who just rides off his Navy SEAL rank, and no one likes him in the SEAL community.
It's very true. It seemed a little obvious, this character. I actually agree with you, Adam, completely on this character. Hearing his speech, it felt almost made exactly to take votes away from the grassroots.
It was intentional.
It was completely intentional.
I mean, British. I listened to all the speeches. British speech is by far the worst. Jeremy is actually the best, in my opinion. Lori came second place. I'm just talking about speeches that inspire me. That's my honest opinion on it, right? And Lori and Jeremy gave very good speeches from the heart, really talking to what the new conservative movement is. And then I watched them intentionally split the votes. And then what they did was they corralled all those votes and then they shuffled them over to Berta Horn at the last minute. That was intentional.
It was.
It was intentional.
Did you see that photo that somebody took of Britta and Phelan and a couple of others that were kind of gathered down on the floor? And this was during the time right after the first round of the votes. And so they were all kind of in there, conspiring to what they were going to do with the votes. And to me, I think the biggest, I guess I'm going to say, disappointment was Richard Holtorf, because he and I had conversations.
Sure. I've had conversations with him too. And,
he claimed that he was for the furtherance of the party. And I said, if that's true, then number one, you shouldn't be running. But if you run and you're going to get knocked out in the first round, who are you going to throw your votes to? Yeah. And he wouldn't answer it. So I knew,
it's because
last summer.
But instead of being a moral and ethical candidate and understanding, one, lessons learned moving forward, you need to solidify behind single candidates. And that's going to be very important in the governor's race. But second to that is that this guy claims to be a guy who supports oil and gas and farming and ranching and water rights. I never heard Britta Horn utter any of those words ever in any of her speeches or anything other than unity, whatever that means. Sounds like unicorn sprinkles.
Her whole mantra is, we're going to reach out to the middle, to the unaffiliated, to the conservative Democrats, and we're going to bring them into the fold, into this big tent.
Yeah, they got killed off at least about 10 years ago.
Well, that's a tell, right? Because here's the deal. You can either do the hard work and be hated. Actually, ironically, I have the book sitting right here. It's called The Courage to be Disliked. And I encourage every conservative to read this book, because if you're actually doing the hard work and you're actually going to be involved with these things, you have to actually be hated by half the people that you work with, right?
The Bible will tell you the same thing.
Yeah, and if you don't do these things, it's not going to work out to your benefit. If you're trying to get everyone to like you, it's not going to work, right? Gonna work. And here's the thing: is that when you say, "I want to bring in everybody," I want to bring in the moderates, I want to bring in the independents. That sounds nice, but that you save that for the general election, right? Yeah. When you have a Democrat versus a Republican, then you can do your reach out there. When people say that they want to open up the tent and they want to bring in more votes and they want to get rid of the primary voting and whatever else, get rid of the caucus and all these other things, what you're telling me is that you're only interested in yourself maintaining re-election, and you're in it for the money for special interest groups. You're not in it for everyone around you, because no one knows who you are except the 40 people that control the party, like the state executive committee, the 450 whatever SEC members. That doesn't represent 680,000 registered Republicans in the state of Colorado, which I think that's the number I last checked. It's around
940.
Okay, 940. Whatever number I looked at. Whatever. It's a lot of Republicans that a very small group of people do. And I remember I said this when I went to the fake meeting that Hugo and I went to. Remember, we were trying to disrupt the meeting in a way where they ran me for vice chair at the last minute. I just wanted to get up and say something. And I remember the one thing I said was, because it was actually near the anniversary of Afghanistan. I was talking to one of my buddies that was overseas at the time when somebody announced my name to go run. I'm like, oh, here we go. So I get up there and I said, there was only 70 people there, 110 total with proxy, which isn't even a quarter of the SEC members, right? Yep. And the one thing I said, and Barbara Kirkmeyer stared me straight down in the face when I said it, I said, do you think it's moral and ethical that only 70 of you are going to decide the fate of all Republicans here in the state of Colorado? Just think about that. Do you think this is a moral and ethical meeting, what you're doing? No, you're trying to centralize power around a very small group of people, and I don't think that is correct. You don't represent my values, and I think there should be more people having a say in what you're doing here, whether you think it's right, whether you think it's wrong, and that's still going to be decided in court, obviously, because that's still an unresolved issue with Kirsty Burton Brown leading the meeting and a whole bunch of other stuff. But I'm sick and tired of all these very small groups of people controlling what I have to say or what my friends say at the refinery, or the farmers and ranchers out in Grand Junction who don't have the time to drive to Denver and go to these 6:30 a.m. pancake breakfasts, as I refer to them as. You know what I mean? It's a humongous waste of time. And one, that's why podcasting is super important, a good social media presence, constant communication with your constituents. And I don't see it. I haven't seen anything from the Colorado State Party since they got elected, minus some snippets I hear on Facebook, or we're only going to email the SEC members. Heck,
it's words more than anything.
If I was Britta Horn, or if I was the elected chair, I'd be putting out like a daily Twitter 1-minute video. Hey, this is what we're doing today. This is what we're doing for you. Please reach out to us. You know, we want to get you connected to here. We're running this event. We're doing this. Hey, if you're the chair, hey, whatever, you won. Whatever.
These are the same people that cried about disenfranchising 900,000 plus Republicans in a primary. And my response to that has always been, show me a primary where 900,000 Republicans participated.
Exactly.
The average, you know what the average participation rate among registered Republicans in a primary is?
I'm going to say under 30%.
It's under 20%.
There you go.
Okay. And
because you're not motivating these people to participate. You're not inspiring me to do anything.
Well, and it's not going to get any better from here. I think that, Adam, young guys like you and me, when we had the previous officers in the party, we could go up to non-Republicans, you know, conservative guys who were still Republican, and say, that is my chair. He's about as old as I am. That's our vice chair. She's badass. That's our secretary. She's from Jersey. Don't mess with her. And now look who we have to introduce as
well. And whether you disagree with Dave Williams or Hope or Anna, that's fine. But I respected the people in power. Like, I will respect Britta and Lee in their positions. But here's the thing. I'm not going to help them because I don't agree with their platform. Like with Dave and Anna and Hope, even though I didn't really know them at all, I was willing to help them and support them, whether it was podcasting, elections, and everything. But here's another thing. Even with Darcy and everyone else, I got weekly emails from the Colorado GOP. This is what we're doing. This is what's focusing on. This is what's going on in the state. This is what, you know, we're going to go after the trans argument. We're going to go after gun rights. We're going to do this. I haven't seen anything. And there's some very important contentious issues going on in the state capitol right now. You know who the only person I see posting about this stuff? It's Hope Sheppelman.
Yeah.
Right? I don't see anyone else. These are your kids. These are your rights. They want to get rid of Tabor and stuff like that. These are the issues that Republicans actually care about. My taxes, my kids, everything else. Only thing I hear about is someone trying to get out of a lawsuit that they caused for themselves.
Yep.
That's embarrassing. It's terrible. And this is why DC, I talked to a lot of people in DC this last week. No one is taking the Colorado GOP seriously anymore. I talked to some very high level staffers and they were just like, yeah, dude, we saw what happened in that election and we don't have time for this crap. We just don't. Like, we're not going to get any RNC funding. They're not going to divert stuff. And then especially when all that stuff got posted about Christy Fedora, about abusing her kids and all this other stuff, which is legitimately filed case court paperwork. Like, and you're the RNC committee woman that's representing us? Like,
and not
whether
just
it's
that,
true or
that
not.
These
like,
people
everyone
act
deserves,
like they're clean. They act like they're clean, and that's the problem.
And I'll be honest, everyone deserves her day in court, you know, true or false or whatever else it is. But like the fact that you're even involved in anything involving that is concerning to me from a moral and ethical standpoint of who represents my values in the Republican Party. And I will tell you, like, am I going to hurt them? No. But am I going to help them? Absolutely not. Because I don't want to be associated with that. I work in very high levels of DC. I know lots of very important people, and I'm trying to get a very important bill passed to help our veterans. And if I associate with any of the people that are involved in this corruption, immoral, and unethical conduct, and there's pictures of me with them or anything like that, you get cut off. That's just how it works. Right. So will I associate with moral and ethical people? Correct. But when I see people like constantly go, we don't have time for this. Like in DC, you get like 5 minutes to do your spiel. Right. And when they see a guy who can't tailor or steam a suit, who apparently is a millionaire and owns 30 McDonald's in New Mexico and is threatening to call my commander because I told him to take the Army core values off of his campaign thing, which is illegal in the DOD, whether you're retired or not. And then his instant response was, well, I'm a sergeant first class. I'm like, well, that's cool because I'm a captain, so I already outrank you. I don't care. I'm telling you, as a soldier, what you're doing is wrong. Fix it. And he refused to, and then wore an even worse suit. So,
So I didn't know Phelan owned 30 McDonald's.
yeah, apparently he owns 30 McDonald's. He's a multimillionaire, but he can't tailor a Macy's suit. So, I mean,
It's very
that's
interesting.
bad. It's just bad judgment because everything in DC is appearance. I mean, you'll see like, look, guys, I wear a t-shirt and a camouflage ball cap and my cowboy boots. That's my normal dress. But when I go to these events, I look like a professional. I wear a suit. I wear, Colorado casual blazer and jeans and whatever else it is. But like, people are always looking at you and how you represent yourself, because I don't just represent me. I represent all of the men I work with in oil and gas, all the soldiers and airmen and Marines that I work with in the U.S. military, right? And when they see me on podcasts or they see me on the news or they see me doing XYZ, like I was just out in Knoxville, Tennessee last week doing this amazing interview. I can't wait till it posts. It's very, very powerful. But I represent them. So when I see these people who now represent me, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed because I sit there and go, when people in DC or other states ask me, these are the people that you elected, I go, I didn't have a say in this. I take no responsibility. You know what I mean? But I do take a responsibility to ensure that this never happens again. And like I said, unfortunately, I think 2026 is a loss at this point. There's going to be a lot of seats that are going to get flipped. And what I tell people, grassroots or whatever, but my real thing is it's not grassroots versus rhinos. For me, it's the only people that matter are America First, conservative, Agenda 47 focused people moving forward, because that's the rejuvenation of the party. But what I tell them is that we now have 2 years until 2027 to really find and solidify behind candidates that we can trust, whether it's build our financial war chest, whether it's, integrating more with the Hispanic community, because we need to do the outreach, because I know they're not going to. I know they're going to fail. And here's the thing. This sounds really terrible. We need to let them fail. I know it sounds terrible when it says, oh, you need to go door knock for Barb Kirkmeyer because she's a Republican. And I'm sitting there going like, I morally and ethically cannot support someone who has a 46% rating and voting for my conservative values. Yeah. Right. And that's just like, hey, I'll tell other people to go do it if that's what they want to do, because, I'm a district captain in Weld County, apparently, or whatever that means. You know what I mean? But it's just I morally and ethically cannot help you. And here's the thing is, we'll see what happens in 2026. I have a feeling they're going to lose a lot of seats and lose a lot of ground, and that's their own doing. Now, I could be wrong. They could go raise $10 million. They could revamp themselves. They could register another 100,000 Republicans. Maybe I'm wrong. But based upon their previous behavior and how they're acting right now, I don't see it happening. I just don't.
The party,
that's a shame for them.
The party is now in the firm control of Anschutz and Koch. Those are the two that were behind this group.
Well, actually, there's one you're missing, and this is the biggest problem in the Colorado Republican Party is Barbara Kirkmeyer. Everyone talks about Britta Horn. They're just pawns in all of this.
She doesn't have any money.
Oh, no. That's incorrect. She is fully funded by Ken Buck and Steve Wells. Okay. And then the NRCC. Okay. She has so much money, it's unfathomable. And the reason this is concerning is because
I meant her own money.
Oh, no.
Who needs money of your own when you got other people's?
That's actually incorrect as well. So, okay, let's just spill the beans now, because this is fun, because I don't care. I already gotten death threats from her people.
This is why we have Adam on the show, folks.
So Barbara Kirkmeyer actually owned her family owned a family farm up here in Weld County, a vast amount of acreage, which she bought back for $1, and she leased it out to Anadarko Drilling. She makes a shit ton of royalty money. And also, she is the queen of distributing who's going to run and who's going to win. If you see her going into El Paso County, into Weld County,
Anadarko left the state.
They did. They're now owned by Oxy. Okay. So the leases just transfer over, right? So Barbara Kirkmeyer has a lot of money, almost unlimited amount of money. And what she does is she goes down to every single county or precinct that she thinks is important, and she prints out a list of candidates who those PCPs or whoever are going to vote for, and they do it because she threatens them and states, if you don't do this, you will never be elected and you'll never serve in government, which is why I wasn't allowed to be anything in Weld County, because I refused to kiss the foot of the queen. I just won't do it. It's not moral. It's not ethical, right? And Steve Wells, and I will tell you this connection why Weld County is unbelievably corrupt is because what happened is that you look at the county commissioners, Kevin Ross and Scott James, and all these other people. Well, this is interesting. All the water supply comes from Wyoming. You know who owns that property? Steve Wells. Do you know who Steve Wells put in charge of that entire water plant before they were elected commissioner magically? Kevin Ross. So Kevin Ross did a deal where he supplies all of the water into Greeley and into Weld County on the behalf of Steve Wells, because Steve Wells tells him what to do, and then funded his $2 million campaign to be commissioner. And when he became commissioner, you know who was appointed as the director of oil and gas permitting in the state of in Weld County? This guy named Stephen Maxey, who is now commissioner number 1. So Stephen Maxey was in charge of, he's a dairy farmer, and he had a bunch of land agreements with Barb and Steve and everything else. And he was basically told the only permits you're going to approve in Weld County are on Barb Kirkmeyer's land and on Steve Wells' land. And this is why everyone hates Lori Sain, because Lori Sain was commissioner at the time. Lori Sain came out and said, no, every permit should be approved, and every farmer and rancher who owns mineral rights deserves the right to have those royalties. And they hated her for it because she's the only commissioner who voted against the selective permitting in Weld County, because it was going after Barb Kirkmeyer and Steve Wells's money. So they pushed her out and said that she was not a conservative, that she wasn't voting with the rest of the commissioners. And that's why Lori Sain was considered persona non grata in Weld County. And on top of that, Stephen Maxey, who has no oil and gas experience and never worked into the oil and gas industry, they own Maxey trailers and they own a dairy farm, because he was a good boy and he did exactly what Barb Kirkmeyer said. He was funded into the election, and he is now commissioner number 1 in Weld County. So Barb Kirkmeyer owns the oil and gas permitting racket. She owns the landowners who owned all these things. And on top of that, Steve Wells also bought off the sheriff, Mr. Steve Reams, who is a bonus member and an SEC member or whatever it is, because Steve Wells gave him a house and 50 acres of land for $1 to do whatever he told him to include not prosecuting his son for over 4 DUIs in Weld County, which you cannot find on any of the criminal dockets because they do favors. So when you see Steve Reams and you see Steve Wells and you see Barb Kirkmeyer and Maxey and Scott James and Kevin Ross, they look nice and they'll talk your ear off. And I've had pleasant conversations with them. But just like when I worked in intelligence and I had to follow ISIS and I had to find the bad guys, you follow the money. And when I started finding out where the money was coming from, then I started finding out the people involved. Well, guess who else lost a lot of funding in the state and had to go out of state for their congressional campaign? Lauren Boebert. Why do you think Lauren Boebert switched so quickly? Barb Kirkmeyer offered to help fund her campaign and funnel money towards her, and so did Steve Wells. I'm not going to say any other congressional members because I'm trying to stay in their good graces on it, but this is all public information. You can go on the FEC website and you can see every member of Congress and who took money from Steve Wells. And then they're directly connected to Barb Kirkmeyer, and Barb Kirkmeyer is the ringleader in running all these people. And I'm not saying this because I have anything personal against Barb Kirkmeyer. I don't know who she is. I've never talked to the lady, anything else. What I know is that it is immoral and unethical what she's doing. And she is controlling so many elected members in multiple counties because of her money and power influence in the state. So it's not Britta Horn that's the problem, but who is she funded by? Barb Kirkmeyer, right?
She's just the puppet.
She is a puppet. I will tell you, if America First conservatives and the state of Colorado really want to do good and they really want to try to get good candidates elected, like Scott Bottoms for governor, who I fully support, I'm going to be helping him in his election. He's one of the few candidates I've agreed to help. You need to get rid of Barb Kirkmeyer. Barb Kirkmeyer is an incestuous poison on this state, and she does not represent my values. She does not represent President Trump. She does not represent Agenda 47. And she, unfortunately, has bought off so many candidates in the state with so much money. It's hard to walk away from that when you're an immoral and corrupt person. And that's really the heart of the issue here. The entire if you notice, who is at the SEC, meeting for the state elections, and who is involved in running up and down the aisles and talking to every single candidate, trying to get them to flip their votes? It was Barb Kirkmeyer. Yeah. Right. So now everybody
as
knows.
Justin called these people his trusted advisors.
Yeah.
That was
and then
a special moment.
And then she found out that I was getting a bunch of funding for a super PAC that I'm forming from all these very influential companies that are very, very mad at Barb Kirkmeyer because they denied their oil and gas drilling permits, which cost them like hundreds of millions of dollars. Right. So
and
these
the country
people,
as well.
So these people in Texas and Ohio and Nebraska who own these oil companies that had to move out of the state of Colorado were going to come in and fund everything to support Lori Sain because she was the one who was approving all the permits. And when she found out that I was doing that, I got phone calls from third parties associated with her where they said, I better keep my guns at my door. And this is why those 40 PCPs were not allowed into Weld County, because they wanted to prevent myself or Cody LeBlanc or Lori from being elected members in Weld County, because they know that we know. right? And we were going not necessarily expose it, but we were going to right the ship and push the rudder in a different direction, and in the slow moving, chaotic Titanic that's hitting towards an iceberg. But when you see them rope in other, let's say, participants in Weld County who become very active, the problem is that they're not offering them money; they're offering them access to influence, or what they think is influence. So you see a lot of people running around with t-shirts say "Win like Weld." Well, if by win like Weld you mean corrupt the entire system with money and power and influence, and then you get invited to the pancake breakfast now and not anyone else, you feel like you're part of a social club. And that's the problem, is that these lower peasants, nothing against them, they feel like they're part of the club now. And Barb Kirkmeyer pays attention to me. She's just using you to use your social media platform and push whatever things Heidi Ganahl pushes out and everything else, because then Barb Kirkmeyer can't be attached to it. So you look at all these random Facebook groups in Colorado, and specific people are pushing out different narratives. And to be fair, they have no idea what they're doing. They feel like they're part of the club because they're being included and they're getting text messages from these people. But at the reality, they're being used and they don't realize it. And it's something I've been trying to warn them about, is that you're being used by her ends by these means for a different end than you understand. And it's a bigger problem, and it's very scary.
Well, thank you, Adam.
That's also why Hunter Rivera is now chairman in Weld, because
very proudly so, from what I hear.
Hunter is placed there by Barbara, and I don't know if he's still her aide or not.
Well, here's the thing. I actually have had pleasant conversation with Hunter. When you get him one-on-one, the guy actually wants to do the right thing. But unfortunately, he, in my personal opinion, I don't know this for a fact, he's being told what to do by Barb, because he was Barb Kirkmeyer's aide for a long period of time. And the guy
thought the same thing.
Adam. And the guy has been completely funded by Barb Kirkmeyer since he was like 15.
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't know what you don't know, and this is all that you know, and you know what I mean, and you're, I'm involved in the RNC and everything else. Well, yeah, because Barb Kirkmeyer gave you access to that. So now you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself. This is actually the biggest problem I see with the young Republicans, especially down in El Paso.
I was just about to mention that, actually.
Because I actually went down there and I'm like, hey, I'm a young Republican. I'm 37. I'm not 40, so I should join. And I actually disengaged from them for a while, because what I saw was these people were so brainwashed into believing what these older Republicans were telling them, that they had no future desire to make a party for themselves. They wanted to continue to hold the baton from the people that are corrupted and within power.
Bingo.
And this is something that I keep telling the young Republicans or anyone else that talks to me about politics, is that we can do this collectively. Like, I am the national vice chairman for the American Veterans First Alliance. Okay. We actually are gaining funding and money from all different states to help push different candidates in Georgia or DC or Nevada or whatever else it is, because we want to see good American war veterans or EMTs or police or firefighters to actually be elected into office, because we are the ones that have borne the cost of society, and we are taking care of our kids, and we know what's going on more than you do. Right. Because the problem with a lot of these young Republicans like Hunter Rivera or anyone else, they're probably nice people. Like I said, I've had pleasant conversations with them, is that they're given this illusion of power, and it's being supported by people who want them to keep pushing this narrative of consistent conservative failure. And because it benefits them, they might get money, they might get elected, they might get a couple $1,000s here and there to go door knock and print out pamphlets and everything else. But you need to look at the bigger things. What's your 10-year plan? What's your 20-year plan? Because you're not going to be young forever. And unfortunately, you get sucked into this system. You get sucked into this disinformation belief system of this is how the party is. Well, it's not. And Donald Trump has proved that. Donald Trump has come in and completely revamped everything and trying to show us the way forward over the next 3 years. Because if we don't do those things, if we don't follow the model for what J.D. Vance is pushing forward, we're just going to go back to the Mitt Romney days, or these magical 80-20 discussions about Reagan. And yeah, Reagan was okay, but he wasn't that great. Look at his actual policies, what he passed. He wasn't that good. You know what I mean? And people had this misbelief that he was amazing and did all these things, and that's what we need to get back to. Well, I was born in 1987, and I don't care what Reagan did. Okay? I care.
Adam, I'm right there with you.
I care.
To be honest, you got to remember that these a lot of these people, they didn't see the collapse of society that we lived through. So the idea
Reagan brought me to the party, so I
knew Hugo was going to say something.
Reagan did some good things, but he did a lot of bad things, right, as well.
The time is over no matter what is the point.
It is.
Anyone who mentions Reagan, you kind of know immediately you're outdated, your tactics aren't going to win.
Why would I want to model something that happened 30, 40 years ago? That's like saying, hey, you know what? The P-51 Mustang was the best was the best fighter in World War II, was the sexiest thing around. We should bring the P-51 back. No, we have the F-22 and the F-35. Okay, there's new systems out there. There's new technology. There's new ways forward. And there's younger people flying those things. And I promise you, you put up an F-22 against a P-51 Mustang, it's going to last 10 seconds, right? Not even, right? So that's my analogy for where the Republican Party needs to move to.
In fairness, though, we do need to pull some of the good things from Reagan.
Sure,
We don't have to
absolutely.
go back to that era.
Correct.
For his time, he was the man. Okay.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
he wasn't perfect. He got duped into the amnesty thing by the Democrats,
Yep.
and they stabbed him in the back as soon as he did it.
Yep.
So yeah, he did some things that, he probably himself regretted after.
They were never done before, to be fair.
Well, and just like people are going to say about Trump has made plenty of mistakes, but it's up to us as a generation who takes over after with J.D. Vance to improve the party. We don't have to keep going back to what we know. We can we can take what we know, take that knowledge, and then increase our knowledge and our conservative movement by making it better. We don't have to keep it the same. We could just make it better.
I agree with that, Adam. I actually have a question for you based on that, because clearly there's a pattern. I think we can say that there's a pattern, and I'm not afraid to say it. I believe that the pattern that we're seeing in the GOP, maybe more broadly, but Colorado especially, is a lack of masculinity. I notice a lot of young men, they listen to, let's be honest, who primarily women tell them in the leadership in the party, tell them what to do and who to vote for. And I do see a startling lack of male leadership. I mean, even the men that you mentioned, a lot of them, I would suggest, are, they're real men and all, but this American masculinity seems totally missing from our party in general, which is a shame, being in the Southwest and being the home of cattle country and all this. So what I want to ask you, Adam, is why do you think that this is happening with our young men in America, that we are not standing up for our principles when we get into positions of power? And what makes young men like us different? How do we replicate that?
Well, one, it has a lot to do with faith and what your belief system is, right?
That's true.
The biggest thing that I see is that men have lost their principles because they are lonely and they think they need everyone to be their friend. Yeah. Your only job as a man is to be the faith leader, the provider, and the protector of your family. And at the end of the day, you need to be the most violent, savage wolf that is known, but you need to understand how to control it. Like, I'm a very violent person. I'm capable of unbelievable amount of violence, but I come off as a very calm person because I have a good mental health. I have a good faith community that I participate in, and I understand that it's my job to protect my community, state, and nation as a soldier, right? The problem with most men today is that they don't have these community connections. They don't have a good brotherhood. They don't work out. They don't take their fitness seriously. They're fat. They're lazy. They're slobs. They want to play video games all day. They're not getting out there and doing hard labor. They're not getting out there and learning a craft or a trade or a skill or a talent, like whether it's playing guitar or farming the land. Do something that gives you purpose. They're so busy with pornography and chasing women and drinking and doing drugs. They're forgetting that these are just advocates for the devil because you want an easy life. Christ mandates that we suffer, right? We are not supposed to have an easy life. If we don't suffer on a daily basis and learn from him and model who Jesus Christ was, then we are going to fail. And this is actually one of the biggest concerns I had watching all these Republican elections and everything else, is that, I'll give it to Dave Williams. Like, Dave Williams went out there and he's not afraid to talk about his faith. And he was constantly attacked of, I don't want a Bible thumper up there. I don't want this. Those are weak men. Those are weak men without moral and ethical principles. And that's the problem. I'll give all the credit to Dave, whether you like him or not, is he had nothing, I'm not saying the tactic he used in his email was the most effective, right?
Everyone would agree with that.
But most conservative, actual, valued Christian men will agree that God does hate flags. And it's not, to use the Westboro Baptist Church analogy, it's that God hates anything you idolize other than him. That was the message. But if you don't understand the Bible and you don't understand Christian theology, then you're never going to understand that. Now, I understood that. Now, I understood how it was going to be taken, right, from all these Christian atheists out there who claim that they go to church and they go to Cowboy Church and do all this stuff, but you don't go to church. Like, when you're having a drum set and an electric guitar.
Oh, look, another social club.
Yeah, it's another social club, right? But go find a real social club. Go to a Bible study. Learn how Christ had to unbelievably suffer, and so did a lot of the people in the Bible, right? But the problem is that most men choose not to suffer. They want to sleep in. They want to be lazy. They don't get up at the crack of dawn and go work out and take care of themselves and punish the body that God gave them, which is your temple. You're supposed to take care of. So if you're not trying to be the most violent person possible and you're not taking care of your health, then how are you ever going to protect your wife and your kids?
Yeah, how is any woman going to look at you and go, "Oh man, I want that"?
Well, this is all a culmination of 30, 40, 50 years of the culture emasculating the population, because
we allowed it.
Hugo had a front row seat to it.
The goal has always been to, one, destroy the family, two, destroy patriotism, and
Mhm.
3, infiltrate all areas of government, which they've been successful in doing.
Right.
including
And
our own party.
And I will
including
blame
our-
and I will blame the men of the generation that came before me, to include my father, because you want to know what? What happened when the transgender issue started coming up? I didn't see my dad at community centers fighting for gay books not in school. So that wasn't really a big issue when I was a kid. But even still, when those issues started to present themselves, especially in
There
the
was
early
fighting to be
2000s,
done.
especially when Obama was elected, right? Is that we saw men who refused to take a stand because they needed to go to work. They needed to take their kids to soccer practice. They said, I don't want to be involved in government. This is not for me. It is your fault. It is your fault that we are here where we are today, right? It's not
Hey,
necessarily.
it'll be our fault later, so don't think we're attacking
It will be.
you. It will be our fault later.
It will be our fault if we refuse to do anything in action those things now, right? When I only see
Remember
four representatives in the entire state House of Representatives, like I said, Stephanie Luck, Scott Bottoms, Heidi, Brandy Bradley, and Ken McGrath, and they're the only ones speaking up for the values that
Out of how
that I
many?
want. Out of how many? Right? It is ridiculous that we're even considering getting rid of Tabor. It is ridiculous considering that if I misgender my child and he wants to be a boy, it's a girl because they're 5 years old and they're 5. Why you don't let 5-year-olds make decisions? You know what I mean? And if I misgender them, you're telling me that Colorado Protective Child Services can come in and take my child now because I misgendered them, and that's a law that we're trying to pass? First of all, especially Jennifer Bacon, because she's absolutely off her rocker. Who asked for these laws? No one. Right? None of
The
your
people with the
actual
money, most
constituents.
likely.
Right? And another thing that really makes me angry is like Brittany Peterson out in Colorado District 7, right? I did an amazing interview. You can go back on Tuxes and Tomahawks, listen to Casey West's interview. I actually brought him to my house with his wife, and we did a long interview. This man served 2 tours in Afghanistan, has terminal stage 4 brain cancer from his exposure to depleted uranium rounds out of a CH-53 in the Marine Corps. He is 100% disabled veteran. And all he's asked for is to get VA appointments to get funding to continue to fund his brain cancer treatment so he can have the best chance at living or live a peaceful life until he passes away. And Brittany Peterson is out there complaining about how it's Donald Trump's fault that she can't vote remotely on Zoom in Congress because she has a newborn baby and it's not fair to her. If you can't do the job, hand it off to somebody else. And I fully encourage women to stay at home with their kids and take care of their newborns. If you want to contribute to the family and have a job in the future, that's fine. But here's the thing. If you want to ensure the family unit survives and you want to raise your kids, that's fine. But being an elected representative means you're not about yourself. You're about the tens of thousands of people that voted for you. And you better do your job, especially if there's a combat veteran with brain cancer who just wants to go see a doctor. It is embarrassing to this country. And these are the people that we're electing. No one asked Jennifer Bacon to pass a law saying if I don't have a sticker on my gas pump that says I'm contributing to climate change when I purchase this gasoline, that it's a $20,000 fine per day per pump. Who asked for that law? Nobody except, Earth Justice, the environmentalists that fight me at the refinery, and all these special interest groups. Why? Because weak men who refuse to take a stand in the past are not doing their job. And they're not advocating for these things because, well, it's not my problem. I don't care. Well, it's going to be your problem. It's going to be your problem. This is the slippery slope argument, is that over the last 20 years with these people in power, who are the same people that were elected into the Colorado GOP currently, are the result of failed policy. And if we don't have younger men and women who are participating in their government actively, we are going to fail, period.
So that is a message to all of our audience, especially young men. Get involved now. It might be too late in the future.
Yes.
So that's that's kind of a good nutshell of what we're fighting here in Colorado, but also on a national level. On the bright side, we've had some good news here the last couple days. The president has won back-to-back rulings from the Supreme Court. No thanks to Amy Coney Barrett.
Talking about weakness a little bit ago, weren't we?
Well, I think President Trump is probably regretting that pick now.
Yeah, that was a Mike Johnson pick, though. So there you go.
Well, he helped, but it was still up to Trump to nominate her.
Well, I think in the first term, Trump had a lot of issues where the fact is he tried to work with multiple people as a businessman. He tried to bring in people from every aspect because he agreed that that's the best way to make decisions in a community, like his experiences in New York. But what you don't understand about politics is if you don't have people that are 100% aligned with your ideology. I hate when people say, oh, it's the purge. Yeah, it is the purge.
Yeah.
It is the purge. We need to purge all these people out that aren't down with Agenda 47, because if you don't, you get results like this, like Amy Coney Barrett. So
Yep.
Yes, exactly correct.
So the first ruling that came down was regarding the Aliens and Enemies Act from 1798 that President Trump has used and implemented to root out and deport these declared domestic terrorists, MS-13, Tren de Aragua, and all these other gang members.
Or as we were told before, Tres de la Agua, as we were told at the SCC meeting.
What?
That is how they mispronounced it at the SCC meeting, yes.
I cracked up on that one. Yeah,
he did.
So I always tell people if you're going to pronounce Spanish things, practice it before you do it. Don't.
No, I'm a white Irish guy. I will mispronounce every single.
No,
Spanish
Adam, this was quite funny.
purpose.
Is when this was done, I looked at Hugo and just said Rio Grande River.
Yeah, Tren de Aragua, River Derchi.
Yeah. So anyway, the fight was about this idiot judge that is dirty as the day is long. Boasberg, who thought he was going to really lay it out to Trump, and Trump gave him the finger, and rightly so, because his order was turn that plane around and bring those people back.
Yeah, how about I drop them off at your house?
How about I drop them off wherever they're flying against right now?
It's like, oops. We lost them. We don't know where they are.
I believe they call that Chilean Airlines is what they call that. But...
Yeah, they just crashed into the Andes out there.
So SCOTUS came out with the ruling and, and slapped that down. And now this judge, from what I understand, I don't know all the details yet, except the fact that his wife is involved in one radical group and his daughter is involved in another. And he decided he was going to use the bench to try to foil the president of the United States. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't they temporarily suspend him? Isn't he under investigation right now?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that's correct.
Okay. So he's unable to make any additional rulings, but the other side of that coin, though, is the part about having judge shopping for one, and number two, having a judge in a regional district issue a nationwide order. Having a judge that's, say, in San Francisco issuing a ruling for something in Texas. It doesn't work that way. And they judge shopped on this one because the actual...
well, that's why they tried Trump in District 1 in New York, because they hate him there.
Yeah, well, that too. But this one case that brought this whole thing to a head was in Texas, and they took it to a D.C. circuit judge to rule. So that's judge shopping, and from a legal standpoint, I'm no scholar, but I understood that's going to get banned. I think the court is already in process of banning that type of process because it's not the way the Constitution or the judiciary is supposed to work.
Not that that's ever been an obstacle to them.
No, but I mean, it's so important to solidify our judiciary and actually get ethical and moral people who are making decisions. Your only responsibility to the Constitution as a judge is to nothing else, right? Just like as a military service member, I'm not here to protect Americans. I don't give a fuck about any of you, to be honest. My job is to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That includes Americans who are domestic enemies to the Constitution. And I don't think people understand that. They go, oh, our men and women fight for our freedoms. No, we don't. We fight for the Constitution so that the furtherance of America can continue to exist.
That's a good thing, actually, because to be honest, if it was the way that most Americans think it was,
the Constitution,
we get this hero worship of the military, which can be very dangerous because it means that one day we might hero worship our oppressors.
You fight for the Constitution, but the Constitution protects the citizens. So
sure, but that's all citizens, right? Like, I don't care who you are, where you come from, what you identify as. That's fine. But at the end of the day, my job is not to protect you; it's to protect the Constitution. And that means if we have to remove you or whatever else it is. Like, we've had plenty of American terrorists. I mean, this is the 30th anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing coming up here real soon, right? Like, there are domestic terrorists. There are people who do bad things. There are technically white nationalist groups out there. There are anti-Semitic people out there, and they need to be dealt with, right? But that's what we use our primary for the law enforcement for, right? It's not the job of the military to do that unless things go really, really, really bad. And
what I find interesting is that the very people who are out there shouting Nazis and fascists to everyone
are Nazis and fascists.
Are the Nazis and fascists.
Funny how that works. This massive projection that they got.
I wish like Trump sends all these guys to El Salvador, which I fully support. I think that's great. It's so much cheaper for us to send our worst criminals over there. I wish we had a time machine where it's like, if you think these guys are Nazis, I'm going to send you back to like 1930s Germany, and you can let me know how it goes for you.
Being Polish myself, it is a little frustrating when certain people who did certain coups call you a Nazi because you support grassroots positions. That was my experience. That was my first experience with the coup.
It's so ridiculous. I'm like, look, I've seen pure evil overseas. I've seen people thrown off of buildings and being zip tied because they were gay. I talked to Tig, who's one of the survivors of Benghazi at the Bannon event, and these guys
you could find his interview we did in the comments.
Yeah, they were constantly attacking us about like, oh, you guys are letting old women get hit by cars, and you guys are Nazis and fascists. I'm like, I will buy you a one-way plane ticket to Gaza, and you can let me know how long you last.
Yeah, you can have a heart attack from seeing a Dodge Challenger from that position.
Yeah, they're literally slitting people's throats and bleeding them out in the ocean right now, and beheading Catholics, and getting rid of all of these people overseas, which no one's talking about in Syria, right? Like, we let Syria fall to these terrorists over there, and I promise you're not going to survive 30 seconds over there. I dare you to go call an ISIS guy a Nazi and see how it goes for you. Let me know. He'll gladly give you what you're asking for, because he hates you and he wants you to die, and he wants to rape your wife, and he wants to dismember your children, and he wants to impose Islamic rule over you, over Wahhabism, right? Like, people don't understand like how evil and cruel the world is outside the borders of the United States. You should be thanking and kissing the ground every day that you even have the right to protest or burn an American flag here. That is your right. If you try that in any other country, you're going to disappear.
Yeah.
And even in countries that aren't authoritarian, like if you try to burn a Mexican flag in Mexico, people will beat you up because of strong nationalism. The fact that we don't have that strong nationalism here is a tragedy. I
mean, I was in Peru and I saw protests of people getting taken down and disappearing into blacked out vans when they were protesting the president. Right. Like, I saw we were down there and 2 women got shot in a bus right in the chest right there for participating. Right. Like, I'm just telling you, like,
Hugo, you look like you're having flashbacks right now.
Yeah. I mean, these are not.
I've been there during 3 military coups, and
Bronco's not a safe area.
And I know what they did to the last elected president who tried to dissolve the Congress. They caught him before he could do it, and it was an interesting story because when it first came out, they had issued a order for his arrest, and he was trying to flee to the I think it was the Mexican consulate.
Yeah, he took refuge in the Mexican embassy.
But no, he didn't. The people got wind of it. They surrounded the embassy, and he couldn't get to the embassy. And that's when the national police came and arrested him, and he's been in the dungeon ever since. People don't understand how good we have it here in the United States.
Yes, seriously.
Because when you get arrested down there, there's no such thing as a speedy trial.
No, they don't care.
If you're a desperate,
especially if you're a foreigner.
Well, I have no sympathy for that guy because he was a Hugo Chavez acolyte who got elected.
Very true.
Yeah.
And he got elected in a very corrupt election against actually a very Trump-like female candidate that in my opinion, won the election, but they stole it from him right in tune with the 2020 election here. So they orchestrated,
just like in Brazil.
Yeah, in Brazil, they orchestrated that. But the thing about this guy that's in prison right now, he hasn't had a hearing. I don't think
he's not going to.
And no, he's gonna disappear here soon enough. and then people are going to say, "Oh, we don't know what happened to him."
Yeah, and
Well,
that's
and
just
that's the
that's just
thing,
normal
Paul.
business over there. Look at the Mexican drug cartels. Look how they operate. Like they're
But-
finding 25 dismembered students on the border out there out of Juarez. Like I'm telling you, man,
It's absolutely terrible. But this actually begs the question. So these are politicians in other countries. And you've seen
Mhm.
this before. Historically, the Dutch killed and ate their prime minister, which if I'm ever elected to office, I will have that Rembrandt painting in my office to remind everyone what can happen to politicians if you
Yeah.
screw up too badly. And I think politicians need to remember that, because other countries, it's not just the people who are getting oppressed by the police. Politicians, like you said, get disappeared all the time. Here, politicians are so sacrosanct that protesting outside the Capitol means they have to put on gas masks and evacuate.
Well,
We have our politicians
Yeah.
are so coddled in this country.
Well, here's the problem with that. All these politicians are under the belief of that once they're in power, they can stay in power as long as they can maintain the money.
You're not
right,
a
and
vestal virgin. You're not eternally sacrosanct now just because you got elected.
Well, and this is why, like the one thing I hate about even the new GOP leadership is that their objective is that we're winning as long as there's an R in a seat.
They were
Well-
very clear about that.
Well, what
yes.
kind of R are you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The problem is
What
is
kind of
that,
R
okay,
are you?
they're calling it a win as long as there's some called red R in a seat, but that's not
They've
a win for
openly
me.
said this.
No,
It is your responsibility as a registered Republican in the state of Colorado to ensure that if your representative is failing in what you asked him or her to do, to remove them and replace them with somebody else. You know,
Exactly.
we shouldn't be keeping people in office for the sake of keeping them in office, like Barb Kirkmeyer. I mean, God, she's been in office forever because, well, she's an R, so we're winning because she's an R. No, you're losing because she is, and I'm just using her as an example because she has the worst voting record in the state of Colorado.
Yep.
Like, you are constantly voting for somebody who is compromising your values because, well, we have an R in the seat, so we're winning. You're not winning if you're voting for somebody who's compromising your Republican values to
It's
Democrats.
true.
You're not. So you have to replace them. It is up to you to run for office. Just because you're Joe Blow nobody doesn't mean you can't run for office. Go find some friends. Go start networking now. You have about 2 years now to
In
start
fact,
making those decisions.
especially so, because the fact that these people, I want to encourage everyone out there. Don't think you have to make something big of yourself in order to run for office, because those are the people with vested interests who are going to get manipulated. I think what we need are people without vested interests, beyond
best
just
people.
being within the people. Exactly. If we come from the people, that is coming from a genuine place of American national culture, American national masculinity,
Yep.
the things that we need to restore. So
Well,
if you are Joe Blow, we need you more than we need people like those in the high towers.
You know, and at first I was really against like the whole like super rich people running for office like Trump and stuff. I'm like, oh, here we go. They're gonna have this influence. Actually, and to be honest, it's the poor people who run for office that are the problem. Because the problem is they get bought off very, very easily. They're told what to do for the money. Now, I'm not saying everyone should be a billionaire or millionaire running for office, but when you have an independent candidate who can self-fund themselves, not have to worry about fundraising all the time, but they are a good moral, ethical candidate and they stand by the principles that they say they're going to run on, they're kind of your best option. Like Donald Trump is a great example of that. Like the guy didn't need anybody's money, but the guy's sticking to his guns on things. You know, and that's why you need to find these who are successful businessmen who have been helping run the state in the background, who, you know, aren't the Anschützes or the Pat Strikers who are trying to influence elections, right? You need to find good community leaders that have been a part of these things and providing jobs to the community and let them continue to make a difference in their community, state, and nation moving forward.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, I guess we're up against the clock, so let's close it out with something that is happening at the state capitol right now, and that is they're going after Tabor, folks. Pay attention.
Going after your money, people. Pay attention.
And I think it's
for the schools, though. It's for the children.
no, it's for the children. That's what
for all the children that were aborting, right? I totally forgot.
Oh, speaking of that, was that Democrat that said that they were going to save money by aborting more children.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, but apparently not, because we are funding the schools that the children aren't going into, and funding LGBT agenda programs to make sure that people have even less kids.
Or even that councilwoman out there in Longmont who literally took an LGBTQ umbrella with all her friends and like literally attacked a constituent in a park that went viral.
That was kind of screwed
Twitter.
up.
You know what I mean? It's like, but in order to remove her, it's going to cost $50,000 in order to remove her and run a special election. So nobody's going to do it. They're going to let her stay in power. It's ridiculous.
No, but you will see that news story in the description, folks. Always stay on top of these local issues here on Hispanic Patriot. Never miss an episode.
Yep. All right. Well, it's been fun. Thank you for joining us tonight, Adam, and
Very
we look
much so,
forward to
Adam.
working with you. We're on the same team, so
Yeah.
it's gonna be a fun 18 to 24 months.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
make sure you guys follow me on Instagram. It's adam.DeRito2010. Check out my website, adamderito.com. And if you guys are interested in really running for office and making a difference in your community, state, and nation moving forward, please reach out to me. We're building a coalition not only in Colorado, but in multiple states. And let's talk about the real issues. Let's get people actually involved. Let's stop the 6:30 a.m. pancake breakfast brunch group from destroying our community, state, and nation, and let's make a difference and fight for Agenda 47.
There you are.
Amen.
And check out Tuxes and Tuxedo. What was the name of
Tuxes
the
and
podcast?
Tomahawks. Yes.
Tomahawks.
We go to the embassy parties, but we got freaking Tomahawks back there. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Adam. Have a good night, and we'll be seeing you down the road, man.
Very much
Take
so.
care.
Thank you, Adam. God bless America.